Hi, everybody. As Edgar introduced me, I am one of the emerging communities and immigration reporters for KPCC. I feel very lucky in that I think it is the best beat at the station. None of the other reporters are here, so I feel very comfortable saying that. And yeah, I feel very excited to actually be the moderator for this event because I am part of a multicultural household. One day we'll be starting a family, and I think I have a lot to learn today. But you know, it just seems like a really perfect time to be talking about diversity. And I know a lot of folks here have been thinking about it for a while, but I mean, just in terms of like the sheer numbers and facts out there, you know, the people of mixed race are one of the fastest growing populations in the country. And according to some numbers I've seen, about 15% of all new marriages in the US are mixed. That was in 2010, according to the Pew Research Center. So this is, you know, I think that's more than what it was. It was double what it was in 1980. So yeah, this is a good time as ever to have a conversation about diversity. So I want to introduce the panelists we're going to be talking about this with. And to my immediate left, I have Sonia Kang right here. Sonia is vice president of the group Multiracial Americans of Southern California. She's also founder of Mixed Up Clothing and also writes at the blog Mixed Up. And right next to Sonia is Heidi Duro. Which, you know, I think a lot of folks here know Heidi as the founder of Mixed Remix, so, you know, big reason why we're here today. She's also the author of an award-winning New York Times bestseller. It's called The Girl Who Fell from the Sky, and it's about a biracial girl growing up in Portland, Oregon, who's trying to uncover a family mystery. And yeah, and I think we'll probably hear about the book a little bit more from you, but it sounds like it was based on your own experiences. So Heidi Duro. And next to Heidi, we have a couple, very lucky to have a couple with us today. We have Terry Franklin first. He's a trust and estates litigation attorney in Los Angeles and a founding partner at Sachs, Glazier, Franklin, and Lodi's? Lodi's. Okay, Lodi's. He's dad to two lovely young teenage girls. And next to him is his partner, Jeffrey George Moline. Some of you guys who were here earlier may have caught one of his films that was shown in, I believe, in this actual theater. And so he's a triple threat in the sense that he's a songwriter, musician, and as you know, a filmmaker. So thanks so much for being here with us today. Thank you. Yeah. So I wanted to just kind of kick things off by talking about how we got this idea to do this forum over at KPCC, how the producers came up with it. And it was really jump-started by a commercial, actually several commercials. And they kind of got a national discussion going on around the country. And they all went viral. So there's a very good chance that you saw them, you know, if not, you know, on TV, and then you probably saw them on social media. And what they all had in common is they showed families who you don't typically see in mainstream media. But just to jog our memories, I thought maybe we could play some of them. And I was going to ask our tech guru, Dave, if we could start off with the Cheerios commercial.
Mom.
Yes, honey?
Dad told me that Cheerios is good for your heart. Is that true?
Says here that Cheerios has whole grain oats that can help remove some cholesterol, and that's heart healthy.
So remember that young woman, young girl actually, because her name's Gracie, and I'm sure she's going to be a big star one day. But adorable kid, and lots of people loved the commercial, but there were also a lot of haters too. And I think the commercial got as much attention for the backlash it received than for the cuteness of Gracie. And you know, spawned a conversation online, and you know, kind of like counter. There were people out there who wanted to counter the backlash, and I think actually one of them is with us today, Sonia. Can you tell us a little bit about, when you heard there was so much vitriol towards this particular ad, what your group did? Oh, because I forgot to mention that you're also, I think, VP of the, okay, right, the Multicultural Americans.
Multiracial Americans of Southern California, we found out that it was going viral and there was a lot of hatred going on. So what we did was to support the what we call a movement, and encouraging folks to celebrate their diversity. We went out and we all bought boxes of Cheerios, General Mills products, you name it, and we all took pictures of our families and submitted them online, just so that folks could say, and so that they knew we were here and that this is what we want to see in media. So it was a really great response. We didn't want to respond from what the haters' point of view was. We wanted to go ahead and say, we are here, we support you, and this is the action that we took.
Right, so this commercial, the Cheerios one, is probably the one that made the first big splash, but it kind of started like kind of a slate of other commercials that kind of were also trying to feature multicultural households. And so it seems like Madison Avenue has kind of taken a page from the Cheerios commercial. And I think another one that was very popular and got a lot of people's attention, you guys might remember, is the Swiffer commercial, right? Where they, just to set it up, it was just a family, showing how well Swiffer works, and the fact that, well, you'll see that they're not the typical family you see on TV. It was kind of just an afterthought, but can we go ahead and cue that up as well?
When you only have one hand, you're not doing anything as fast as you used to. Which is funny, because I still do it better than her.
I don't think I was meant to sweep. It's a little frustrating, look.
I can't help out as much as I used to.
Do you need help?
Let's open it up.
It's a Swiffer sweeper.
Swiffer dusters. And I can extend so I don't have to get on the step stool.
I don't know how it stays on there. It's like a dirt magnet, just like my kids.
This is a danger zone. That is crazy.
Yeah, no, this definitely beats hanging out on the step ladder.
Good job, baby.
I don't know about you guys, but I kind of, when I saw that online, I pressed replay. I don't know, it was just very, it was fun to watch, and it was just great to see. And I don't know if anybody else on the panel thought that too, that it was kind of just, oh, it's, we're trying to sell a product, and we got this cute family, and that was it. I guess I'm just curious for you guys, what does it, how did it feel to see that kind of family being, showcased?
Well, it's fun to see it on television. I mean, we see it in our daily lives, and we think that this bubble in Southern California that we live in, that is more diverse and more extraordinary than so many other places, we kind of forget that this is unusual. And then you see it on the screen, you go, oh my gosh, this is unusual. I haven't seen this before. And so it's really sort of revelatory to see these experiences, even though it seems shocking that it's been since 1967 that the Supreme Court made the Loving decision, Mm-hmm. Why have we not seen these images before? That's what seems sort of surprising to me.
Yeah, and actually, I since moving to Los Angeles, I've gotten the sense that a lot of commercials are made in LA, and I wonder if, being in this bubble, you kind of get to propagate these images out to the rest of the country before maybe they've seen it in their own communities. Sonia, were you going to add something?
Well, I wanted to say I'm really glad to see the commercials like that, because usually if we get to be seen as mixed families, blended families, it's an image, and that's great. And we have, mixed race celebrities, but we don't get to see them living and breathing and loving. And that's what's so great about these commercials. There's no conflict, there's no difficulty. It's just, this is a fact that, yeah, we're of different races, but we love each other just like everyone else does. And this is how we do it in real time, in real space.
And we're cleaning.
And we're cleaning, like
houses.
we do regular things. There's nothing strange about this. It's all, very regular.
Yeah. And were you going to say something?
Oh, I couldn't believe that people were upset with the Cheerios commercial, because how can you be upset with a beautiful little girl who is so loves her dad, she's concerned about his heart health?
Mm-hmm. Right.
How are you going to be upset with that?
I know. Well, actually, I found it interesting in just kind of gauging backlash to these commercials. I mean, there wasn't so much as much backlash to the Swiffer ad. And whereas there was a little bit more to the Cheerios ad, and some folks made the point that, the father in the Cheerios ad is African American. Does that resonate for you guys at all? Do you think that is a possibility for why the Cheerios one, just, there was just so much anger and kind of bile about it. I see you nodding.
At least I would certainly think that that's got to be true, that a big part of it is that we still are stuck with these vestiges of these images, these iconic images of, the black male rapist, and pure white that is going to be tainted and destroyed. And I think that that continues to resonate with us even today. I just saw a study the other day that indicated that they did a test, and I can't remember exactly how they structured it, but the result of the test was that gay black men were more likely to get the same salary for job offers than straight black men. And it goes to the question, or at least it raises the question of whether there's a sense of threat, a feeling of threat that you get from a straight black man, that you're not worried about the gay black man so much. They're not threatening in that office environment. So I think there are a lot of implicit biases and assumptions that we all have that are sort of stuck with us, that come from history from long, long ago. But until you can sort of address the fact that you have them, you can't sort of move beyond them. And I do think that that touched a nerve with some people, and they express themselves, and so it's kind of good to know what we're up against.
Wasn't it Sears or JCPenney that had issues with, they did a Father's Day ad with two dads, and that upset people a great deal too.
Yeah. Who would
came out and did two moms too after that?
Oh, I hadn't seen the two moms. I think I've seen the two dads. And who would have thought that Madison Avenue, they're there to make a profit, but they're really sparking this conversation. But speaking of gay dads, thank you, because that's setting me up for the segueing to the next commercial, our last commercial. It's the Honey Maid ad, and it was very notable because it was called, I think it was called It's Wholesome campaign. The hashtag was this is wholesome. And because the language that he used, this is wholesome, really took a page from, I think, the conservative right is always talking about how, the kind of the nuclear family being mother, father, several kids, 2.1 or 2.3 kids. This is wholesome, but this ad kind of turned the word upside down, or like try to, add another dimension to it. So could we watch the Honey Maid ad now?
No matter how things change, what makes us wholesome never will. Honey Maid. Everyday wholesome snacks for every wholesome family. This is wholesome.
I hear, okay. Oh, you hadn't seen that one. Okay, yeah, so that one ad managed to cover two gay dads, I think, a couple or several multiracial families, got in a military family there that's multiracial, did a lot in 30 seconds. Who knew what you can do,
well, they showed the American experience. The mixed experience is the American experience, so they showed what America actually looks like.
Right, yeah. What about, the fact that there were two gay dads, it's not the first commercial with two gay dads, but it was in the context of, just them raising a newborn, and I think there was another child in there. It was like a full-blown family. So it's not something that was only conceptual, but yeah.
Yeah, again, as you say, it's the fact of presenting everyday life just as everyday life is. And, there's so much, I think, more and more every day we see these images, and it creeps in a little bit at a time, and hopefully it sort of spreads so that people aren't so shocked or stunned by these concepts, that people can love one another in ways that we haven't traditionally expected people to. I don't know if that's happening, but it seems like it has to be, and I can't tell whether Madison Avenue is reacting to the reality and the trends, or whether it's trying to get ahead of the curve and trying to present it. But if products want to connect with people, people want to see people that look like them and who have similar experiences. So.
Yeah, the cynical side of me says, no publicity, bad publicity is good publicity. Controversy builds chatter and interest in the product. But they didn't have to go this route. They could have chosen to do something more traditional.
I'm sorry, I think Madison Avenue is on the ball. I think that they're seeing that the demographics of the country are changing, and that people's attitudes are changing, and they want to build product loyalty. So I think they're targeting.
Right. So, this is, they may be on the cutting edge and in some ways, but we wanted to use this as kind of a jumping off point to talk about, can we teach diversity outside of commercials? How do we talk about it day in and day out? And so I thought maybe here's a good chance to get to know about you guys' personal experience to help shed some light on this. And before we all got together, I had a chance to ask our panelists, what are some of the most memorable things people have said to you or your family as it relates to race? And I knew I was going to get some interesting answers. And I imagine that some of what they have to say, you guys will probably be able to relate to. But I know because Sonia and Heidi being biracial or multiracial, that a lot of the comments you guys have gotten relates to your appearance. Can you guys elaborate on that?
Well, so I'm mixed, Mexican and Black, and my favorite is, so they say, so you're Mexican and Black, so you're Puerto Rican? So as if,
Naturally.
It's like when you used to mix colors in school, like yellow and blue make green. I didn't go in and I came out a whole different. So that's what I get all the time, more often than not.
I think it's confusing for people a lot of the times when they look at me, they don't know what I am. And I remember coming to the United States. My dad was in the military, and we grew up mostly overseas. And when I was 11 years old, we moved to Portland, Oregon, to a mostly African-American neighborhood. And people would say to me, "What are you?" You've heard that. All of you have heard this, I'm sure. "What are you?" And I'd say, "I am the very best speller in my whole class."
Oh.
And they're like, "Oh."
Wow, snappy with the comebacks.
I had no
weren't even
idea
trying.
what they were asking me. I learned after a while what they meant was, "What are you? Are you Black or are you white? What are you?" And so I learned how to answer correctly in the right scenarios. And so, but it was because of the way I looked, because I have light eyes. I've straightened my hair today. I'm sorry, I did sell out today, but I have naturally curly hair.
But you had to learn that.
But I had to learn that too. Yeah, I didn't know my hair would do this until I was 30, I think.
Oh. You had to learn how to answer those questions.
Right, exactly. And so now, that's the big question. What are you? Are those your eyes? Why do you look like that? Now I'm 45 next week, and I've learned how to answer the questions differently. So now I say whatever I say that day. I'm half Danish and I'm half Black. I say I'm mixed. I say I'm an Afro-Viking. I have a fellow Afro-Viking out there. Yay! Or I say I'm a story. Which is puzzling to people because, like, what does that mean? Well, then we get to talk about it. And I think that's what's really missing. Like, it's wonderful that we have these commercials. It's wonderful that we have images. But now we need to actually have the conversation and move the needle on the conversation so that when I go to a school that has read The Girl Who Fell from the Sky about a half-Black, half-Danish girl, there isn't someone who's 17 in the year 2014 who says to me, "Oh my God, you wrote my life." Which happened recently. And I thought, but I was writing about being mixed in the 1980s, and it's 2014. Why haven't we changed this conversation yet?
And it sounds like you were able to respond to the question, what are you, like in different contexts. How old were you when you learned to code switch, so to speak?
Well, I mean, it took a little while. I didn't know that there was this thing called race. Like, I knew that my dad was one color and my mom was another, but I didn't have the meaning behind it that you have in America. I struggled all through middle school and high school. I thought I got it down by college. It took a long time, but it was that code switching thing. I don't know if you had to go through that too.
And I imagine a lot of times when people are speaking about your appearance, like they're like, "Oh, that's so cool," and it's usually
it's so exotic.
They're trying to be complimentary, but how do you take it? How do you internalize? Because you probably get more comments on your appearance than, say, the average person.
Right. Well, I tend to find everything a teachable moment. So when I was growing up, I was really offended, and I'd get really hurt, and I'd come back, and I would tell my mom, why am I this, and why am I that? But now I just, I take the time to actually try and find out. I feel like we're the ambassadors. So however we kind of respond is the way they're going to take that out. So I make sure that I'm trying to represent you guys in a way that is, of, positivity. So I've learned to just kind of talk about what I am. Besides being mixed Mexican and Black, I was actually born in Puerto Rico, so that that. Yeah. So right. I should have had the full disclosure, but I was raised in Hawaii before coming to California. So I've had to talk to myself as well and say, what am I today? Who am I going to be? But I always make sure that if somebody's asking me, I answer, in a way that they're curious. And I think people are mainly curious about it, and they don't come from a harmful place.
And has the questions, have they slowed as you've gotten older, as you've been around adults, or has that changed at all over time?
Well, then I married a Korean man. So my husband is Korean. So the questions have not stopped, because now I have my little ones to now have to answer the questions. So they're looking at me, looking at them, looking at him, trying to figure us out. So no, it hasn't, it's actually increased more for us.
This actually makes me think of you guys, because you had, Terry and Jeffrey had this interesting kind of comedy of errors that I think you might have mentioned.
Shopping.
While you guys were shopping together.
Yeah, for Hannah's 13th birthday, she had the pajama making party in Orange County. And
So Hannah's
Hannah is Terry's youngest daughter, and Haley is his eldest daughter. And so she would have been 16 then, and 15 then. And so his ex-wife and Terry and I and Haley went out shopping while the kids were making their pajamas. And we went into a very upscale shop in Orange County, and the woman working the sales clerk, she was staring at us, trying to figure out who we all were together, why the four of us were hanging out together. And then the two women went into the changing room to try on dresses together, and she started a conversation with me and was like, oh, well, it's a birthday party, and da-da-da-da. She thought that I was married to Terry's wife and I was the new husband, and that Terry's daughter was his wife, his new wife.
Oh my goodness. That takes a lot of creativity.
Yeah. And so we explained to her, no, we are the couple. And this is the daughter, and that's the ex-wife. Yeah. But the extraordinary thing that came out of that is she felt safe enough to share with us was that she had recently been dating a Black man. It was the first man of color she'd ever dated.
She said it kind of secretly. She kind of
said,
she'd like, I've been dating a Black man.
And the beautiful thing was, she said, I've gained 10 pounds, and it's the first time in my life a man was excited by that.
Did you guys like that, her feeling she could divulge?
I loved it. I felt, wow, we are being open about who we were and are, created a space for this woman to feel safe enough to share something like that with us.
As Jeffrey said, it was in Orange County and in a place where we were an unusual group, but she just seemed like this door opened, an opportunity for her to share a little bit. She just said, I've been dating a Black man. Because Jeffrey's thinking, so have I, but that's okay.
Yeah. Right.
But I get that a lot. Why do you have so many Black friends? Why are all your friends, you have colored friends, your friends are all, so this.
I mean, from your friends out here in LA?
Out here in LA, yeah. I have I'm fortunate. I belong to this organization called the SGI USA. We practice Buddhism, and Sundays is generally the most segregated day in the United States because everybody goes to their church, and everybody, wherever they're going to pray, they pray with people who look like them. But in the SGI, we have this, it looks like this room, basically. It's a rainbow of people. So I'm very fortunate to have that practice
you feel very
to go
comfortable.
to. Yeah.
And so this kind of mix-up that happened, I mean, that was a very...
Mix-up?
Yeah, that was quite a dramatic one. But do you feel like when you're out in public, do you feel, especially when you're with your daughters, do you feel eyes on you? Are you conscious of that?
When we go out as a unit, somewhat.
Yeah.
I do feel like people are sort of trying to figure out, you know, what is this grouping, what's happening here, and in many of the places we go, it's not unusual. You know,
They always take the credit card from him and they give it, or the bill. They give the bill to me, and they take the credit card from him, but they give me the credit card and the bill to sign. Always, it does not fail.
people make assumptions.
Right.
I'm the white guy at the table. I'm paying.
But I have to say, like, I will stare at you guys too when I'm out. I'm always looking for the multiracial blended people everywhere I go. And I will stare at you because I want you to recognize I'm part of you. So I kind of do this, it's like, you know, the black nod. I call it the mocha baby nod. It's like, and so I do that a lot at farmers markets because multiracial people really like farmers markets, I've noticed.
Is that true?
That is true. You guys go to the farmers market at least once a week, I know.
It's in the sauce.
So I feel like we should get a code so we all could decide that when we do this, we're not staring because we're upset or like quizzical or trying to do math on a family, but because we're like, yes, you and me, we're together. We're in the same tribe. Yeah.
Well, Heidi, actually, though, that makes me think of something because you revealed to us that sometimes when you do the mocha baby nod, sometimes you don't get anything back.
I don't get the love back.
Yeah.
I know.
Because sometimes people just don't know.
They just don't know.
I remember when I went to college, I learned that on this predominantly white campus, that all the African Americans kind of nodded at each other. And there were a few people who I think didn't get it or didn't realize that part of our communal experience is to speak, is how it was called. You know, people from the HBCBUs, historically black colleges said, you speak, you nod, you say hi. And the people who didn't get it would often be ostracized or would kind of feel like, how come nobody likes me? And it's a small thing, but not everybody has the skills to pick up on the fact that one of our cultural accepted behaviors is to acknowledge one another.
Well, I want to put out that memo here, so you guys spread the word, hashtag mocha baby nod.
Did you coin that, by the way?
I just did.
Oh, okay.
Trademark. It's something I've been using, but there have been times where I've been shy about acknowledging someone because I had a bad experience once. I remember I was out at dinner, and it wasn't a fancy place, and there was a family across from my family, and my family is very diverse with people who are Danish and Filipino and Irish and African American, and we've got the whole rainbow in there. And so we were together, and there was another family across from us at a large table, and it looked like, I don't know, I wasn't trying to do the math, but there were white people and black people and like caramel-colored children. And I went to the bathroom, and on the way back, I had a card, and I wanted them to know about this podcast that I did at that point, and it's free. So I said, I thought you guys might want to know about this. It's free. And I didn't say anything else, and I said, I'm sorry to interrupt your dinner. And I went back to my table, and maybe 15 minutes later, I handed it to the mother, by the way. She had the oldest daughter bring the card back to me and say, my mom says we don't want anything to do with this. And gave me back the card. And so it kind of made me gun shy about actually acknowledging families. My theory is this, that a lot of times multiracial families who aren't in this conversation that we're all having, that we're all interested in, they think by not talking about race or the difference in their family, that keeps them safe. And if you bring it up, if you bring up the idea of difference or race in their family, that will suddenly explode their bond. This is just my theory, I don't know. The people here obviously aren't part of that experience, so I can't understand that process.
I mean, if anybody, I don't know if anybody can shed some light on this, but feel free to pipe in. But
my previous partner is mixed. He's black and Jewish, and my family had lots of difficulties with him, but they loved Terry. And
me, really.
But when I stepped back from that, I was like, well, what gives here, right? And I was thinking, maybe for my parents, the fact that Che was mixed was just a little too close to home for them to be able to really feel comfortable with. So in that, and the head nod thing, I wanted to add something to. I didn't know what was happening. I would be walking with my friends, and it'd be like a head nod. I'd be like, well, do you know that person? No. So now I do it. I walk down the street and I just nod. So.
Not to other people of Swedish descent, or?
Well, we are everywhere.
That's the Swedish nod.
The Swedish nod.
Oh yeah. You betcha.
So, I mean, we're talking about families and parents, and I want to ask Sonia, I mean, you grew up in a household with a Black and Puerto Rican, is it Black and Mexican? Oh my gosh, I just made the cardinal error, sorry.
Remix.
Right, start over. Black and Mexican parents, did they talk about the differences in race? Was race something that you guys acknowledged, or was it, just there in the background?
Well, I think growing up in Hawaii, it was there wasn't very much talk because I think Hawaii is a very safe place that has a lot of different cultures there. So it was very safe. It wasn't until when I came to California, specifically the Valley, that the conversation kind of came back a little bit more. My sister and I would have to leave to go to school. We were bused, and so my hair would start like. See, she knows already. She already knows what I'm going to say. So my hair would start off with my curls down to here, but by the time we took the bus, it would be up to here. So, I mean, so we started having those conversations and, with my family and with my mom and dad about what it meant. We were actually told not to speak Spanish in the home. It was at a time when the school district actually wanted us to speak English. So it was... talk about just being confused all around. So there I was in class with the last name of Smith, but I, understood and spoke Spanish. So there was a lot of discussion about race growing up with my parents. And so I think one of the things that they try to do, which I try to do with my kids now, is to make sure that, we have friends, we have play dates. We try to make sure that we cover all the groups, and we kind of try and make sure that we go to cultural events or belong to organizations like Mask and another one called Samburo, which kind of connects you to somebody greater, to something greater. So we try to make sure that we do that, and so I've taken what I've learned and tried to do that with my children as well.
Mm-hmm. I find that interesting that instead of feeling like from what your experienced childhood, feeling like you have to acculturate or assimilate, you've really embraced these different elements of your heritage, and now I understand from talking to you earlier that your kids are in Korean immersion too. So right. On top of all the Spanish they may hear in the home and.
Yeah, so what we do with my kids is, I speak more Spanish than my husband with Korean, so we make sure that we went to the school district in our area, which is near Porter Ranch, and we got them into a Korean immersion program. So we do that with them. I speak Spanish at home, and so they're learning, different languages. But there's different programs out there, different school. There's a Spanish immersion, there's some French immersion. So it's one of the things that we found that was going to be really important. It helps connect you, and so that's something that we wanted for them.
Mm-hmm. Can you guys, or maybe I can ask you, Heidi, what do you remember hearing? It sounded like race wasn't something that you guys talked about very much, but you must have. You became conscious of it as you got older. Was it from your peers? What you heard in school?
Well, that was what was most unfortunate. That my mother is from Denmark. She's an immigrant to this country and grew up in a homogenous society at that time in a small town in Denmark. And my dad was born in the segregated South in Texas, and he lived there until he was 16. He wanted nothing to do with race once he was a grown-up, and he found a really great freedom in the military because he always had overseas stations. And in Denmark and Germany, where we spent a lot of time, he was the American, and he felt free, and he loved that. And he never talked to us about race at all. He didn't want us to, I think, have that baggage or shame that he did growing up, in the segregated South. So that conversation was not available in that regard. My mom didn't know anything about it. So here I am learning about race from my peers. And where did they learn about race? Well, they learned it from TV and from silence. all the silences in their own families around race, and that's not a good way to do it. I think ultimately we have to realize that, you know, we have a drug talk with kids, and we have a sex talk with kids, and we have to have a race talk with kids before somebody calls someone the N-word. I mean, it has to happen before that. The conversation needs to start in the moment of positivity first, I think.
And can you address that? Was that something that ever has happened to you, that you've been?
Well, it didn't happen to me. I don't have kids of my own, but I've tried to keep the conversation open with the kids I know, my niece and my nephew, my friends' children, and you know, I get them to talk about this at the festival. And so that they understand that they're allowed to celebrate and to connect with their very complicated identities, as opposed to saying, okay, don't say this bad word, or I'm so sorry someone said this bad word to you. I think it should start young. It should start early.
I actually just read a study where kids actually start to see differences at about 18 months, 18 to 24 months. So the conversation is early on of when you need to start having these conversations.
Exactly.
And I think also the fact, you know, I'm going to bring my little medical hat in, by not talking about, you know, medical issues like diabetes or cancer or whatnot, doesn't make it go away. So I really think it's important. Not talking about race does not make it go away. We have to have these discussions. We have to have it early on, even if they are uncomfortable. I just had the birds and the bees conversation with my, well, he's now 15, but when he was 13, I mean, I didn't think it was going to get worse than that, but, but, you know, but have the conversation early on so that you're not standing at the grocery store in line, embarrassed because your kid's pointing at somebody or somebody's pointing at you, having, you know, trying to figure out the differences in them or their skin or their color or their hair color or whatever it is. Start early.
What about with you guys?
I was just going to say on the issue of race and culture, and can you teach diversity or sensitivity or inclusiveness? My daughter is 14, but she's a 7th grader, and normally her school takes a big trip during the course of the year, and somebody had the idea. They said this year, why don't we take them, and she goes to a school called the Willows Community School. It's on the west side. It's in Culver City. Probably mostly Jewish. There are a few black kids, but you know, not very well integrated. But the decision was made that we're going to go to Memphis this year. And you kind of go, why Memphis? We had this great meeting, though, and the teachers explained that next year they're going to be talking about civil rights. So they flew to Memphis. They went to, they're talking about the connections between culture and music and civil rights movement. So they went to Stax Records, and they went to Sun Records, and they went to Reverend Al Green's church and heard the choir sing, and they went to the Civil Rights Museum, the Lorraine Motel, where Martin Luther King was assassinated, and they took a bus ride to Little Rock, where they saw Central High School. So they're really connecting history and race and connecting, and they sort of paired up with a local school, and the students from our school talked to the students from their school. And so there are plenty of opportunities to reach out and just think about what you're doing every day and try to create an opportunity to share and talk about race. And I mean, I was blown away by the fact that the school and the institution felt like it was important enough to tell their stories. And we got a message, because the kids can't bring cell phones on these trips because then they'll be calling home all the time. But we got a message on Sunday morning from the parent who was checking in and passing the word around. They said, you know, the kids are at Reverend Al Green's church this morning, and they're listening to the gospel music choir. And I said, you know, this is so wonderful. I have an African-American daughter, but I know, and she goes to lots of bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs all the time, and so I think she has sort of imbued in the Jewish cultural experience, but so many of her friends, I think, their eyes were wide open to this new experience, and I think it was just wonderful that they were able to do that and enjoy that.
Well, I actually have your daughter in mind with this next question. You know, she's clearly growing up in a very diverse household, especially, you know, having you in her life, Jeffrey in her life as well. And I wonder, do you feel, you were saying this is a really great experience for her classmates, maybe who haven't been exposed as much, the trip you're talking about, to as many cultures, but do you feel like your kids have anything else to learn about diversity? Because I don't know if this is, I think maybe I've been corrected on this assumption by some people that, just because you're growing up in a multicultural household, that, you're living the diverse life. What else do you need to hear? What do you think about that?
I do think that there are other messages that can be taught, because the rest of the world isn't necessarily going to be as accepting. So I think there is an importance to letting our children know that the world may have a different point of view about our being open and being receptive to, multiracial aspects, and to the fact that we're gay. And so you're going to have to deal with these issues in the real world. How do we teach our children to be ready and to prepare for that? I've recently been looking into these implicit bias and implicit assumption tests, and you can go online to, I think it's harvard.edu, or just search for implicit bias, and you sort of go in, and your mind quickly associates good and bad with either male or female, and you can do the test for gay and straight, but it's a wonderful kind of exercise to help you recognize where you have your own biases, and so you can try and use that to step beyond and deal with the fact that you have them, so that you can try to not let yourself be controlled or let your decision process be defined by them.
Is there more to teach kids coming from multicultural backgrounds, aside from the fact that they're going to confront biases out there?
I think it's important to tell them about the history. I think a lot of times people think, oh, well, every 10 years we do a census, and then all the reporters call like the professional mulattoes and get statements from them, and we all say, yes, isn't this great, our demographic is growing, and but we actually have a history beyond that, and one of the projects I have taken on is to illuminate that history. So not just saying that multiracial people and racial connection happened in the 1960s with free love, but it goes all the way back. And so I have this personal project every May. It's Mixed Experience History Month, and I try to profile people in history who have done things, who are of mixed race or who have interracial connections through marriage or their partnerships. I think it's so important to actually know that your family is not just part of a community, but also part of a whole history. It's part of the whole universe. I mean, there's something so solid about knowing, oh wow, there was a Nella Larson in the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s who was half black and half Danish, and she talked about it. So I've got to have the courage to be able to talk about it now too, and I think that's super important for kids to know.
Terry?
I was just going to throw in, this has been a story that's been recurring. I've been telling it all over the place, but I grew up in a household, as far as I knew, both my parents were African American. I knew that there was a history of some Caucasian on my mother's side of the family, and I had a great aunt who was turning 100, and so we were going to plan this big celebration for her, but we'd always had an excerpt of a portion of a will from my great-great-great-great-grandfather times 4, who was a slaveholder in Duval County, Florida. But we knew that part of the will allowed for his mulatto slave, Lucy, and her 8 children, including her daughter who had 6 children. They were all going to be freed on his death. So he had 500 cattle and X number of pigs and X number of horses. And as my great aunt's centenary was approaching, I wanted to get the whole will, because I wanted to see if there was a white family that was referenced in the document, and yet he had these slaves that he was going to set free. So I dug around and I dug around, and I made some calls. I'm a trust and estates lawyer, so digging around to find trust and estates, an old will is like,
you were meant to do this.
This is my life. I'm in the middle of this. And I finally reached some lawyers in Jacksonville, Florida, and I called the first one, and the first one said to me, oh, I'm sorry, there was a fire in 1905. You're probably not going to find it. The records have been destroyed. There's probably not going to be able to find the will. Another person that I called me back. She was a paralegal, and I told her about my great aunt. She was all excited about that, and she said, oh, let me see if I can find something out. So she calls the attorney service, they go down, and she gets a call back, sends me a text or an email that day that says, well, we found a will from John Sutton from 1846. I'm not sure if it's yours or not, but I'll let you know in a couple of days. So this is a Wednesday. My great aunt's party is going to be the following week, so we would love to find it. So Friday, I go into work in the morning, and I have this voicemail message. We found the will. What do you want me to do? I said, well, take pictures, show me. So, she sends me this photograph, thank God for technology that we have today, of this will from 1846, January of 1846, where my great-grandfather times 4 does not mention any other family. He just is, he knows that he's sick and dying. He knows he's of sound mind, but he is a frail body. And so he wants to make sure that he's going to take care of Lucy, and they named Lucy and her age and all of the children and the 500 horses. And he marks it with an X. He dies sometime between January of 1846 and May of 1846. The family, I guess, packs up all their things, get in a boat, and come up the Mississippi River to land in Polk County, Illinois, because he wanted them to be in a free state. And that's where my family's been ever since. But it was so remarkable to see this document, this will, with the bright red wax seal on it, and to know, at least what it told me was that I know the history of slavery. I know about rape that took place, and I know that you can't consent legally to a sexual act if you don't even have capacity as a person. But I have to think that for my great-grandfather times 4 to have seen it to be important enough to get a lawyer to make sure that his wife, that he couldn't marry legally, and that her children would live free after he died, it tells me that love was happening. There was something there. They probably lived quietly and nobody was bugging them, but he knew he was sick, so he had to take care of this business. This was the last thing that he had to deal with before he died, and it just reminds me that love can exist wherever it needs to exist, and it's going to go through rocks, and it's going to go over hills and mountains, but it will find a way to survive. So, that's the story that I can't stop telling, and I'm so excited.
Great storyteller. Yeah.
Great.
Could do a monologue. Go Spalding Gray on this. Yeah. So I hear you guys. You're saying this is a history. This is not something that just started in the '60s and that we're just seeing now. But the term that both of you guys actually used, mulatto, is a word that I think has kind of fallen out of favor. But I've heard you used it a few times now, Heidi.
Yeah, I use it jokingly also. I feel like we get to take back our words, right? And we get to self-identify. I usually use it jokingly because it was a difficult word when I was growing up. I thought, well, wait, that means I'm part mule? You're a kid, and so that's where you go. But I think we're allowed to reappropriate these terms and these phrases and also name ourselves.
Because the narrative of the mulatto has in the past been tragic, right? And I know that's something you want to put out there.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Positive.
Yeah, everybody knows about the tragic mulatto, and I would like to see all of us take the tragic out of mulatto with a little more humor, with guys like Key and Peele, who we're honoring tonight. They've been taking tragic out of mulatto since 2012, which is very exciting. And there's more to the mixed experience story than the sad tale, than the wannabe tale. There's also the tale of triumph. There's the tale of love. We have so many stories. You've already seen that today in all the films and the panel presentations we've had, that even the diversity of us is diverse.
Right.
To her point, I think I self-identify. I say Black. I don't say African American. Even within our own community, it is the way you self-identify, and you have to be comfortable with it. But there are, those who, will look at you, and so we have our own, but issues. But I think it is the way that you present yourself and what you're comfortable with is what you should be sharing with the world.
And it can change, right?
You've absolutely can
change.
Yeah,
it could change many times during a day, in fact. I feel like we should all be open to the fact that this is an organic thing, that it can change. I want my white Danish mom to be able to express all of who she is. I worry about stuff like that. I want people to see her story. I remember this one time I was in New York, and she was visiting me, and we went to see this exhibit with lynching photos. I don't know if you saw that here in LA. It was very powerful. So people used to send postcards of lynchings and said, "We had a great lynching last night," and they would send a postcard photo of it. And it was the very last weekend of this exhibition, and so it was super crowded. Lots of people were there, a lot of African Americans, but it was a mixed crowd. And my husband, who's African American, and my mom, who's white, and me were taking our own time going around the room. And my mom was going very slowly, and I had finished it. And I went back to find her, and I called out her name. I mean, I said "Moa," which is how you say mom in Danish, and she turned around, and she ended up bumping into and stepping on this woman's foot. She happened to be African American, this woman. And you could see this woman like turn into a flame, because here she is in this super racially charged moment, like a difficult, hard moment to see these photographs, and then some white woman is gonna step on her foot. Like, I mean, I could see that was where she had gone. I understood. So I rushed over to my mom and I put my arms around her and I said, "Mom." And then I could see like that flame kind of diffuse. Yeah. But we have to be able to figure out how to identify how someone who looks different even is still part of our experience. Like, we don't know just by looking at someone who they are connected to or who they love or who they're in family with, and this is our big challenge too. I mean, it's my big challenge as well.
Right. So, we've talked a little bit about how to teach that, how to be more open to diversity, being comfortable with it. And Sonia, you gave some really good tips, and you've already mentioned one, just trying to have surround your family with multiculturalism. Your children go to a school, it sounds like, very diverse. But another tool, though, it seems to be the media and books. But the problem is, I think I have some numbers here, is that we just don't have that many books about multiculturalism or books featuring people of color, characters of color. And I think one recent study showed that 3,200 children's books published last year, only 93 were about Black people, 34 about Native Americans, and 69 about Asians, and 57 about Latinos. And this has actually started a social media campaign you guys might be aware of called "We Need Diverse Books," right? And so, I mean, I'm wondering what can we, if there's, with this shortage of books out there, and I imagine other learning materials for younger people, what do you work with? I mean, we Heidi, now we know about your book, but
yeah, it's a great book, by the way. One of the ways I wanted to address it was by creating a festival so that storytellers knew they had a place to tell their stories. It took me 12 years to write and get my first book published, but that was also because I got 48 publishing house rejections because everyone said, no one can relate to a story about a half Black, half Danish girl. There's no Afro-Viking demographic we could sell to. And there isn't. I think there are 18 of us now, just so you know. I'm doing an unofficial census count if you want to be counted. And then we'll get T-shirts once we get to 20. But I think also the problem is people don't know that they can get their stories out there. So I think one of the things we have to do is create more spaces for our storytellers to tell the stories, like the festivals. And I think we have these opportunities. New media has been wonderful to be able to make sure young people feel connected to their own mixed experience, because they can reach out on Facebook and they can have a blog or be on Tumblr or Twitter and connect in that way. So I think we have a lot of possibility going forward.
And I just think that when you're trying to teach something, you try to figure out whatever works. And I think sometimes that means humor. I was moderating a panel for a bunch of trust and estates lawyers, probably 500 trust and estates lawyers. Jeffrey was there with me in Tucson. And, but we were doing a panel on diversity. And this is an organization that has 2,700 members across the country of trust and estates lawyers. And I'm the Black guy. So the guy who was going to be introducing us is a past chair of the organization. And he said, how would you like me to introduce you? And I said, well, why don't you tell people that, as most of you know, Terry is the African-American fellow in the college. but he's more than that. He's also this and that and this the other thing. And he sort of said, "Are you sure I should be saying that? You know, won't that be uncomfortable for you or for them?" And I said, I think that's part of our point is to do what you have to do to get past the uncomfortable point. Right. And in this case, I think it worked. He asked the question, it sort of made a chuckle, and then it led us into a wonderful discussion about diversity. And we had the first woman of color, who was the American Bar Association president, was part of our panel, and she was able to talk about implicit bias testing. And we had a transgender fellow who was able to talk about her experience having once been a man and being the person that everyone would listen to in a room, and then becoming a woman and realizing that nobody was paying attention and having to sort of shake people. So, from a unique perspective of someone who's had both genders, to know that people have biases and expectations, and that you're not going to, you're going to upset them just by your presence. And so letting people know that if you can use humor, or anytime you can sort of find a way to let the hair down a little bit so you can have these kinds of conversations is...
You really let it go, though.
Yeah, I did. I did let it go.
It sounds like, just being out in the community itself. I mean, you guys being all, I've known you for a little short while, but all very outgoing, very open-minded, and just like having exposures like you did, interactions like you did in the Orange County Shopping Center. I'm sure the woman's never going to forget you guys, the sales.
I'll never forget her, so I hope not.
Yeah.
I wanted to just quickly add, it's also not only, it's also banding together. I mean, the reason why this campaign is so popular, the hashtag We Need Diverse Books, is because folks have gathered together and they're knocking on the doors and they're shouting, that we are here and we need these books. So I think that's one of the other things that we should do. Knock on Madison Avenue, whoever the powers that be, and let them know that this is what we're asking for, this is what we need, this is what we're looking for. What the quick thing that I also do with the kids is if I buy a book, I make sure I dedicate or donate one to my kids' classrooms to make sure that if there's a book circle and there's reading, that is one that they grab or can grab, that they have the opportunity. Kids want to see books that look like them, characters that look like them, media, television shows, whatever it is. They want to see themselves depicted. So I think we, get it together.
I have so many more questions for you, but I do want to give the audience a chance to ask questions about, what would you like to see more out there, for instance? Do you guys feel like there's enough books out there? Are there enough, role models out there? If anybody has any thoughts on that or any comments? Oh, right over here, this gentleman.
Hi, my name is John. You'll hold it for me? Cool. Okay. It's not kind of answering that question, but you said, can diversity be taught? And I'm a firm believer in simplifying in basics. If love is taught, and hate and fear is definitely taught, then of course, diversity, difference, appreciating difference can be taught. And by parents, by family, by friends, by introducing people. I think the most wonderful expression of race in America is in different races' foods. I love to eat. I mean, you can tell I love to eat. But my mother always said, if you cook a really good meal for somebody who does not like you, they will become your friend. And so I think food is a great way to, you're not only opening up your child's palate, but you're also introducing your child to different cultures through food. I think it's a wonderful, easy, fun way to introduce diversity into a family.
Right, you're saying with families that maybe are not multicultural, that this is something they can do themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know anybody who's not met a plate of soul food they don't like. But I've also never met a Korean barbecue joint that I love Korean barbecue. You know what I mean? Do you know? And I never had it before. I never knew it existed until one day I'm coming from the set and I see I'm starving and I see BBQ and I don't even
like
focus.
A beacon in the distance.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't even focus on the Korean letters. I just saw BBQ and I went in and it was the most wonderful experience, which made me go like, hey, this is great. Wow. Koreans got it going on because their food is good. I'm saying, no, what I'm saying is, it is funny, but what I'm saying is that it's a very basic, it's a very basic way and a very easy way to introduce different cultures into your household by taking your kids to a Japanese restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, a Mexican restaurant, any kind of restaurant. Ethiopian food, Jeffrey and Terrence took me to that. Okay, we won't talk about that. But anyway, but do you understand what I'm saying? That's a great way to introduce
That's a great
culture
idea. Food is a very accessible, a good access point. And what are other ways though we can talk about diversity or teach it through food? We've talked about books.
I was just going to say, I think we're really fortunate being in Los Angeles. We have all the ethnic enclaves here in Los Angeles. He mentioned, Koreatown, Little Ethiopia. We're here in Little Tokyo. So I think that's part of if I had like 10 things of what I do to teach my kids how to celebrate diversity and how to learn about another culture, food is definitely one. And also the museums that are located in these enclaves as well. That's another way to get the kids out there to learn about another culture. But food is very key.
Yeah, like the one we're in right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hi, so I have a question. I'm actually married to Edgar, who did the introduction. My name's Shauna Gildard. And I have a question. So talking about adopting our children from Mexico, this is something, Sonia, you might be able to speak to. Our son calls his sister China. And as some may or may not know, a lot of times in Latino culture, if someone has almond-shaped eyes, they call them China or Chinito or something that sounds like that. So I heard that and I thought, oh my God, we're gonna come back to LA and we're gonna be around a mixed group of people, and I'm not sure how to sort of talk to him about that and sort of what that means, and how if someone hears him say that, how people are gonna respond. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there because that's one of those teaching things that, is part of culture at the same time, because a lot of Latino people use a lot of terms that I think we wouldn't use in English and probably aren't appropriate, but just kind of wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's huge. Growing up, again, to your point, when understanding Spanish, I think some folks may think that I don't speak Spanish, and so they'll use some of the derogatory words in Spanish for Black people or for Asians or whatever, and you're like, wait. So I think definitely we have to be okay with having those conversations and say that that's not a word that we use, and maybe offer, a different word. Maybe he just could say sissy, hermanita, whatever he'd like to do to call, but to say that we cannot use those words, and that's okay. We know you want to love your sister or do, show signs of affection, but we can't use that word. And I think it's okay to find the teachable moment, but there's also the part that says, we're going to send them out into the world, so we have to make sure that they're using the right words as well. But that'll come with time, I think, as well. But congratulations on the adoption.
And you blog about these issues on Mixed Up, right? Is that?
I do. Talk about doing this. My whole life is about kind of teaching and talking about different cultures and raising kids. And then, when they do come up with words that you're like, oh my gosh, or having, you'll see kids that will maybe slant their eyes for my children, when they're asking their parents, what are they doing? Do you see them? So again, trying to kind of check myself and to kind of understand that, kids are naturally curious, but that, to talk to your kids about what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, that's part of our job as well.
Okay, we have a question over here.
Well, first, full disclosure, my name's Josh. I am the straight white friend of Terry and Jeffrey. I was born in the town where they filmed Driving Miss Daisy.
We have one.
Token. So, I'm not going to pepper them too much with stuff, but Sonia and Heidi, I felt an immediate bond with the military child scenario. I grew up from 5 years old as a military child, and I went to high school in Hawaii. And I think a lot of what we use requires a philosophy of just the kind of conversation we're having. We use this word, immersion, for example, and that feels like throwing somebody into something. Whereas, I mean, I volunteer with a daycare with Kelsey, who does the cake pops. And we see that in there, proximity is what really gets kids to open up, especially. It's in their environment, it's just a matter of You're on a military base, and there's just going to be a large, vast array of mixed, half this, quarter that, and that's just how it is. In Hawaii, it's even more so. And I don't know if we want to use the idea of, throwing somebody into it, because there's always that initial reaction. You jump into a cold pool, you have to get used to it. If it's something where it's at their will to explore their immediate environment, perhaps that's something where their interest takes them to it. People tend to be more receptive to something they think is their own idea in the first place. You just have it lying around. So, I mean, do you think that might be something that maybe philosophically we should try to adopt a little bit?
I like that idea a lot, because I think oftentimes, I talk about the Mix Remix Festival all the time, just to get people here. And sometimes I talk to quote unquote white people about it, and they're like, okay, sounds good, what does it have to do with me? I'm a white guy. And eventually I find that I can find their point of connection. They just they hadn't realized they were part of the mixed experience. So I remember talking to this one guy, grew up in New Jersey, Italian American, identified that way himself. And I was talking about the festival, and you could just see his eyes glaze over, but he was trying to be nice. and I kept talking, and I said, well, we're not just talking about mixed people, we're talking about blended families and families of transracial adoption, and people who are racially and culturally connected. And somehow I think those were the words that made the light go off in his head, and he said, oh wait, that's me too. My cousin just adopted 2 kids from Guatemala. And I was like, bingo, you're there. You're part of the tribe. It's like getting people to think about their own connections in a different way.
Yeah, they see that it's a matter of fact.
Yes,
it's not just
exactly.
something where you can have a xenophobic idea of it's out there and I have to adopt it. It's just, it's here. It's what it is. It's your environment.
And I do think there's a way of being intentional about trying to make sure that our children are taught things that are diverse. I have, a number of friends, or at least a couple of gay guys who have an African American child, and who happen to be friends with my daughter, but the parents really thought, how can we truly sort of give our African American kid a view into what it's like to be in an African American household? And they were really happy to embrace our family, my ex-wife and I, and our daughter, and sort of have our kids spend time together so they could see what it's like to be in a household like that and to understand that. And it allowed us to become friends as parents, and so it never would have happened if it weren't for them feeling intentional about trying to make sure that there was something that their kid could have outside of what they could bring to them. So, where do you go get your hair cut? I mean, things as simple as that, but again, it required some level of intentionality on his part.
Hi, my name's Tom. Full disclosure, first of all, I'm also involved with MASK. I'm on the board with Sonia. And the reason I am is because you can't tell it from looking at me, but I'm a transracial adoptive father. And Terry, I'm glad you brought up that point, because my son was born in Ethiopia, and my wife is Caucasian as well, and we are very conscious of the fact that we can't give him the experience of what it is to be a black man in America. The other issue for him is that there's the Ethiopian expat community that wants to bring him back into their community, which is not the same either, since they don't view themselves often as Americans. So, there's all that tension. But my point, actually, I wanted to bring up a point about the cost of silence. You're talking about how do we talk about it. Part of it is just recognizing differences. And I'm going to crib a story I read online about a family, a transracial adopted family somewhere in the heartland, not in the heart of diversity here in Los Angeles, where it was a transracial adoption situation, an African-American child, and one of many, but there were also biological children in the family, and a Caucasian family, and they never talked about it because they just assumed that this child would understand. And one day, when the child was about 10 years old, which is pretty old to be figuring this stuff out, someone told him that he was adopted, and he was devastated. And he came home, and his mom sort of said, but we thought you knew. And he said, well, no, because he had seen their golden retriever had a litter of puppies, some of which had been black. And so it's just, you cannot make the assumptions. And it's just talking about the differences and recognizing the differences by itself without judgment that I think is the key.
I think that's huge, Tom. Thank you. I think we get so afraid of talking to our kids about this stuff that we stay quiet, and they're asking the questions in their head. You know, so you want to give them this forum to be able to talk about it as well. But I think there's also practical reasons. They found, studies that show that kids that are, around other cultures, you can talk to other people, and you also don't have this myopic kind of view. You see a bigger global world view. So there's practical reasons to what we're doing as well by showing others, showing children different cultures.
And just a quick clarification. So you said sometimes it's hard to talk about race with your own kids, even for yourself?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's I think even within the Korean community, I have to just kind of defer to my husband as to kind of talk about it. I don't, and I'm learning at the same time. There were, when I went to go meet my in-laws for the first time, I didn't know I had to get off of the car at the airport. So there, I thought I could just roll in and just kind of pick them up. But I guess, so there's customs and there's tradition that I didn't know about. So, so I have to talk about that as well. And so, you have to learn. I think it's a learning process. It's a learning process.
Okay.
Hi. Is my name? Okay, I'm Roy Harrison, and I've been mixed race for 73 years.
Woo, yeah.
Okay. But I didn't always know it. I didn't. But anyway, I want to comment on the food. I think the food is great. When I worked in a Southeast Asian refugee camp working with youth, and one of the things I passed on to them was about food, but what's the other thing is to reject what you don't like with some grace and some style and respect. Mm-hmm. Don't say, ew, that's nasty, because you're telling the person they're nasty. Mm-hmm. Okay? And in terms of the Chino, I think that the little girl should be learned to protect herself as well. Teach her to reject those statements. Mm-hmm. And this is a comment without judgment, but it seems to me that 3 out of the 5 people who have spoken have been white.
I don't know. I haven't noticed. I don't see color, but yeah. Well, do we have time for one more question from this young woman over here? Oh.
Hi, my name is Francesca Viller, and I am honored to be here, and I was a panel speaker today on Global versus Universal, the female writer of color. And I apologize, I'm a Japanese Jew, so right away I apologize, no, I'm just kidding. And my father is Russian Jewish, my mother's Japanese from Hawaii. And I just wanted to say also a really good point is that as much as we talk about diversity, I think it's really important to connect the generations and to really relate to the older people in our families. I think it's wonderful for my children to talk to their grandparents and to talk to my parents about each of their experiences as being full Japanese and full Jewish, and spending the day with my father as a Russian Jewish man, and just really getting involved in just what his experiences are, as well as being with my mother, who is Japanese and very shy, and just really enjoying that experience and letting my children experience their experiences as well. And I think that we don't appreciate a lot of the older people in our families who are of pure race, not if there's such a thing as pure race, where we learn a lot of our stories from.
And I think, unfortunately, that's going to have to do it. We have another event coming in after this. So I want to just quickly thank KPCC producer Janice over here, tech guru Dave McKeever, And earlier we mentioned Elaine Cha, who put together this great panel. She's not here with us today, and she helped conceive the idea with Ashley Alvarado, also not here today, but thanks to all those guys. And I hope you got as much out of this event as I have. I feel like I've learned a lot. I want to thank the panelists so much. Thank you. And thanks for being here.